Please help me welcome to the stage, David Cooke.
Living behind a dumpster, addicted to heroin. This was my son when we found him. What followed was a series of experiences with theft, deception, heartache, jail, relapse, arrest, and a couple of near overdoses. The more involved I became to help him find his recovery, the worse it seemed to be. This was not the way it was supposed to go. This was not the parent story I planned on sharing. As a child, I grew up thinking there was something wrong with me, that I was a bad kid, that I couldn't do anything right. My parents openly criticized me, pointing out all the things that I didn't do right, and even treated me like the black sheep of the family. It got to a point where I thought they'd even given up on me. When I went away to college, they were relieved rather than saddened to see their oldest son leave home. When I got older, I made a commitment that I was not going to raise my children this way. They were never going to feel these experiences. So when I did have children, I did everything I could, everything I knew how, to fulfill that commitment. And even when my son struggled with his addiction, I doubled down on my effort to make sure he knew he was cared and loved. Despite my efforts and my commitment, nothing seemed to change his addiction narrative. But I had to do something. So I got on my bike and I rode. I rode for an hour a day for 100 consecutive days. I did this because I knew these rides would clear my severely cluttered mind. This meditative experience completely changed my thinking and created a shift where it helped create a healthy separation between me and my son's addiction. And when I got off the bike on that 100th day, with clarity, I said to my son, I can no longer be involved with your recovery. His response shocked me. He said, "That's good, Dad. Now I can focus on it." Up to this point, I had spent most of my life telling him what he needed to do, how he needed to do it, where he could do better, and how to meet my definition of success and accomplishment. What I discovered in those 100 hours of cycling was that I needed to make the shift. A shift from telling to listening. Listening to my son share what he was willing to share about his journey, his experiences, his struggles, his challenges, and his lessons. And the more I listened, the more he shared. The more he shared, the more I learned. And I discovered a shocking truth, that all my encouragement, all my inspirational talks, all my guidance and coaching had not produced the results I desired. Instead, it left him feeling as though he wasn't good enough or couldn't do anything right. The one thing that I had said I would never do as a parent, I ended up doing. It was as if I had made this commitment, a lifelong commitment, and I found myself in that exact same spot that I said wasn't going to happen. My fear of failing drove me to an outcome that I had every commitment to avoiding. Uncertainty, fear, and failure have powerful influences over our outcomes, and not always in the ways we hope or expected. Research has demonstrated that in order to facilitate change and be a trusted leader, you have to listen first. Yet how many of you struggle to get people at work or at home to do what you want? Are you constantly telling them what you want or how they needed to do it, or demonstrate your frustration when things don't go as you told them or as you expected? The question is, how well do you understand them? Why can't you just do what I say? What's wrong with you? What were you thinking? I can't believe you did that. You should be disappointed. If you ask me, you deserved it. Perhaps you've heard these words from others. Or perhaps you've heard these words in yourself. Feeling shame, experiencing guilt, disappointing someone, falling short of others' expectations leave scars. Not feeling safe to trust someone close to you, where you are free from judgment, criticism, or condemnation, forces us to self-protect, to shut down. How did you feel the last time you felt like you had disappointed someone? Or maybe received harsh words for falling short of their expectations? Isolated? Alone? Shame, guilt, disappointment, misunderstood, angry? Controlling behaviors to meet our defined outcomes prevent others from learning through discovery and experience. We seem to have forgotten that failure is part of the learning process. You can't learn to walk without falling down. You certainly can't learn to ride a bike without crashing a few times. And when you think about your life's greatest lessons, didn't they come from some of your biggest mistakes? Failing, making mistakes is all part of the growth and development process. But when approval or disapproval becomes the yardstick, shame becomes the experience. I had no idea the impact my behaviors was having on my son. I believed I was encouraging him and guiding him rather than burdening him with my expectations or demands. But once I stopped telling and started listening, everything changed. I refer to this listening behavior as selfless listening, creating a safe, judgment-free zone where another person is encouraged to share their struggles, their experiences, and their perspective. Selfless listening is an exchange facilitated by open-ended questions, exploring for information, and listening intently to the responses without criticism or condemnation. Selfless listening is best accomplished through empathy, understanding, patience, love. As others feel heard and understood, it builds trust and it facilitates change. It allows us to expand our view beyond our perceptions or our limited perspectives, to see and feel the world from somebody else's experiences. When I shifted from telling to listening, it was as if the long, dark shadow of Dad hovering over his son had shifted away, illuminating a light on him for who he was, where he was, while revealing all the opportunities before him. He was free to explore life on his terms, safe to share his experiences and his lessons as he desired. Engaging in selfless listening made my son feel safe to begin sharing his experiences and his lessons with me. How do I know selfless listening works? There was a time in this period where our son was living with us. Things were going well. Then after a while, he started sleeping in later and later each morning. Now, in the addiction world, this often foretold of relapse possibilities in the future. So I was worried. One morning, concerned about this change in behavior, I burst into his room and loudly declared, "It's time to get up." My son got up and said nothing. A couple of days later, he approached me about the previous morning, and he asked, "Dad, when you woke me up the other day, were you worried or were you mad?" And I admitted, I was worried. He said, "That's what I thought, but you expressed it as anger." Now before this, he would have probably shut down and said nothing in response to this situation. But now he felt safe to clarify what he heard while sharing with me how he experiences my words. Selfless listening was changing our interactions. Today, my son celebrates 18 months in active recovery, doing amazing hard work to get himself to where he is. I know he heard that. Selfless listening is not the sole reason that he embraced his recovery, but I am quite confident it helped. Imagine the impact selfless listening could have in our world today, where judgment, criticism, condemnation is replaced with empathy, understanding, love, where people would be willing to expand their viewpoints beyond what they know and believe, to seeing the world from the eyes and experiences of others who are struggling, isolated, marginalized. Imagine the impact selfless listening could have on our political views, or on our societal challenges such as addiction, education, homelessness, or in the way we engage others at home or at work. Now, we may not be able to change the world overnight, but you can have an impact on those you work with or live with. We all have someone in our life where the lines of communication are broken, where you are struggling to make that connection, or continually frustrated by their behaviors. Next time you feel that urge to check in, make it about you and your expectations, step back. Engage them and say, hey, I was thinking about you. How you doing? What's new? Now, I know this may sound really simple, but it focuses the conversation right where it belongs, on the world of the other person. Empathy is seeing what others see, feeling what others feel, taking the time to hear and understand someone else's story. It is a gift. It facilitates change. And it can only be accomplished if we take the time to listen, to selflessly listen. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're holding for a moment to fix a visual technical difficulty. We'll be with you just a moment.